Okay, bonjour. So we're moving on today. We're looking at these tenses, and we've been covering quite a few so far, but this one is mainly focused on year 10, 11, and it's called the imperfect tense. So far I've looked at the present tense, which is what we're doing right now. We've looked at the future tense, which is what we're going to do, and we've looked at the perfect tense, which is what we did recently. So last weekend or yesterday, that sort of thing. The imperfect tense is another past tense, but the imperfect tense is used for things that happened quite a while ago. You might say, very much in English, you'd use the term used to. So something you used to do that you don't do anymore. Something from your childhood maybe that you've stopped doing. We'll have a look at a bit more detail of that in a moment. So it's called l'imperfect, the imperfect tense. Something that you used to do. So it's different than the perfect tense, because the perfect tense is something you did yesterday, whereas the imperfect tense is about what you used to do. So it's, as I said, it's used for past events to talk about something you used to happen regularly. So for example, if you used to go swimming on a Saturday morning when you were 5 years old, then you could use this tense. If you stop doing, if you don't do swimming anymore on a Saturday morning, then you could use this tense. It's also used as a describing word, as to describe. So when you're describing the weather, what the weather was like, you'd use the imperfect tense. If you're describing what something was like, you'd be saying it was, you would use the imperfect tense as well. So let's have a look at how it's now. Unfortunately, well, first of all, let's have a quick look. So here's some examples of the imperfect tense in action. So we've got je jouais au foot. You ever think about what that would mean? Hopefully this tense looks a bit different to you. You haven't seen that sort of ending before, but you've got jouais. It's a bit different to what we've seen before so far. So je jouais au foot, but I used to play football. Je regardais la télé. I used to watch television. J'habitais en Allemagne. I used to live in Germany. So if you've ever moved house, if you say you used to live in London, for example, and you moved up to Stockport, you could say j'habitais à Londres. I used to live in London. We've got j'allais au cinéma. I used to go to the cinema. And je mangeais du chocolat. I used to eat chocolate. Maybe you've given it up and you don't eat it anymore. Je mangeais du chocolat. Or any other food. You maybe used to eat chips. You don't eat chips anymore. So we've got here 5 sentences in the imperfect tense. And what I want you to focus on here is I want you to focus on the second word really in those sentences. Jouer, regarder, habiter, aller, and manger. And hopefully what you spotted is what they've got in common is they all end in AIS. Because once again, this verb, the way this tense works, is about taking things off something and then putting on certain endings. And as I've said already many times, if you don't learn your endings as we go along, so if you haven't learned the present tense endings yet, or you haven't learned the future tense yet, or you haven't learned the perfect tense yet, then you're just going to get more and more confused the further we go. So you need to really learn each tense as we go along, because we're going to talk about some different endings today, and they probably will be a bit confusing if you haven't learned the other ones properly. So those are the endings. AIS has been added on to the end. But again, what you should ask yourself is, what have we added the AIS onto? And in most of those cases, we've added the AIS onto the verb, but we've taken the ER off the end. However, when we get to the bottom one, je mangeais, I've put that on there for a reason really, you'll notice that the E is still in there. And that's because there's an extra bit of a rule that we need to have a think about. It's not just about taking the R off the end. So I'm going to show you about what it's about. So let's have a look. So how do we form the imperfect tense? The proper version is this. So this is quite complicated though, so we need to think carefully and pay attention now, pay quite proper attention for the next few minutes. So the first thing we need to do actually is we need to find the we form in the present tense, which very often does involve, with an ER verb, normally involves taking off the ER and adding on ONS. But the first thing we need to do is find that part of the verb, the we form in the present tense. And that is not always the same for an IR verb or an IRE verb. But we find that form, so think about present tense, ONS on the end. You might have to look some of them up, especially some irregular ones like boire, to drink, perhaps would be a bit tricky. So we find the we form in the present tense and we take off the ONS. So that's how we say we play in the present tense, first of all. So this is complicated, we need to listen very carefully. We're talking present tense so far. We take off the ONS from the present tense and that gives you your stem for the imperfect. Like I said, a lot of the time it is just about taking the ER off the end, but it doesn't work in some cases. It doesn't work with the verb manger, for example, and it doesn't work with IR verbs, and it doesn't work with RE verbs. So we need to do it the proper way really first. So we find the we form, we take off the ONS, and then we add on the following endings. So there's the stem, I, and then you, he, she, and then on the right hand side, we, you, they, and they. And then we add on these following endings. So AIS, je jouais, I used to play. Tu jouais, you used to play. AIS. AIT, AIT. So il jouait, he used to play. Elle jouait, she used to play. Nous jouions, we used to play. Vous jouiez, you used to play. And then the ending for the bottom two is AIENT. So il jouait, elle jouait. They used to play, they, group of girls, used to play. So the endings are AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIENT. And again, we have to try and learn these endings as well now. We've already talked about learning different endings. We have to try and learn these endings as well. And again, you can go on YouTube and try and find them, for example, or try and come up with your own song or something, but we need to try and learn these endings. Like I said, this is really for year 10 and 11 because we're getting to more advanced level now, but we need to try and learn the endings. AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIENT. So don't worry about this too much. We're going to go through some examples in a moment. It's probably easier to try and work it out with some examples. So just to confirm that again, what happens? First of all, we need to think about the present tense to find our stem, to find the jou, J-O-U. So in order to find the stem, we have to find the we form in the present tense. So here, as you can see towards the top there, it's jouons. And we take off the ONS, which leaves us with our stem. And then we add on the following endings. AIS for I, AIS for you, AIT for he and she, IONS for we, IEZ for you, plural, and then AIENT for they. AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIENT. This is not easy now. It needs some sitting down and thinking about carefully and doing some practice. So what I recommend, well, let's look at examples first of all. So, je faisais du vélo. I used to go cycling. So here's an example of if you took the RE off the end of faire, it wouldn't work. So what we have to do is we have to find how to say we do in the present tense, which would be faisons, ONS, and we take off the ONS and we put on AIS. Je faisais. J'habitais à Paris. So we found we live is nous habitons. We've taken off the ONS and we've put AIS on the end. So now we've got j'habitais à Paris. I used to live in Paris. J'allais au parc. I used to go to the park. So we've taken the ONS off allons and we've got put AIS on the end. I used to go to the park. Let's move away from je for a minute and talk about he. So il dormait au lit. He was sleeping in bed, or he used to sleep in bed. Maybe he sleeps somewhere else now, not sure. But the first thing we need to do is we have to find how we say we sleep, which would be dormons. And then we take off the ONS and we put AIT on the end. go through some more examples in a minute. Nous mangions chez McDo. Nous mangions chez McDo. We used to eat at McDonald's. So here we haven't just taken off the ER from the end, we've taken off the ONS from the we form, because this is a bit of a different one, because in French they leave the E after the G, because just to make it sound, it's not mangions, it's mangions. So they leave the E in there, and that's why sometimes it can be a bit tricky. So let's have a look at a few more examples. But before we do that, there's one exception to that rule that we just need to be careful with, and that is how you say I was or it was, is the verb was. So with this one, the stem is just simply et. The endings are the same though. So j'étais, tu étais, you were, il était, elle était. So he was and she was. Nous étions, we were, vous étiez, you were, ils étaient, and elles étaient. So j'étais, so again, the endings are AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIENT. So the endings are still the same, but we just need to remember that with the verb to be, so I was, he was, she was, with that verb, we add the endings onto ET. So, j'étais, tu étais, il était, elle était. Nous étions, vous étiez, ils étaient, elles étaient. Okay, so that's how you say I was or it was or he was. That's one important exception. But apart from that, the rest of the time, we take the ONS off the we form of the verb in the present tense. That's to find our stem, and then we add on the end. Have a look, we'll talk you through a few. So, number one, I used to go. So I'm going to go through this nice and simple now. If we haven't quite got it yet, we might be able to get it now. So first thing we need to do is we need to find how we say we go. And that's how we say we go in the present tense. So we knock off the ONS, and then we add on the je at the beginning, and we add on AIS, because that is the ending for used to go. So j'allais is I used to go. So just going through it one step at a time. Next, we've got you used to do. So first of all, we have to find out how we say we do, and we do that by saying faisons. And we knock off the ONS from the end. This time we've got the word for you, which is tu, and we add on the correct ending for tu, which hopefully we know is AIS, AIS, so it's AIS on the end. Tu faisais, you used to do. Number three, we used to live. So the first thing we need to do is we need to find out how we say just present tense we live, which is habitons. So that's the first thing we do, and then to find our stem we take off the ONS and we're left with habite. And then we add in the word we, which is nous, and we add in the word, the ending, which is IONS. So think about that for a minute. There's actually only one little letter difference between we live is nous habitons, and we used to live is nous habitions. So that little I after the T, just after the T, is the only difference between we live and we used to live. And this is why this is quite a complex tense, and it's something we have to be very precise about, but it will get you some very good marks if you can move around and use the imperfect tense, get you some very good marks, because it is a complex tense to use. So nous habitions, we used to live. Next, I used to have. So the first thing we need to do is find out how do we say we have in just the present tense first of all, and that would be avons. We drop off the ONS, and then we're left with our stem, have, and then we can add on different bits. So we've got je at the start, and avait is the ending, because that's the ending for the imperfect tense. So j'avais is I used to have, or I had, I suppose, as well. J'avais. Number 5, you used to sleep. So again, let's just go through this systematically. The first thing we need to do is we need to find out how do we say we sleep in the present tense. And the way we do that is we say nous dormons. So dormons is our first starting point. We take off the ONS from that and we're left with our little stem, which is dorm. and then we add on the different parts. So we are adding vous, for example, and then we add in IZ for the ending. Vous dormiez would be you used to sleep. So again, just try. I understand this is quite complex, but just try and follow it through. So the first thing we need to do, we've got he used to drink. The first thing we need to do is we need to think about how do we say we drink. And this is an irregular verb, and this is why we have to be careful. The answer to we drink is buvons. This is why it doesn't just work to simply knock off the ER or knock off the RE, because some verbs are irregular and it doesn't work. So this is one where we have to be careful. So that's buvons is we drink. We knock off the ONS and then we add on the different parts. So il for the he, and then the ending for that is, if we go down it, AIS, AIS, AIT. So AIT would be the ending. So he used to drink would be il buvait. Number 7, they used to sing. Well, again, we need to think about how do we say we sing in just the present tense for now. That would be chantons. And we knock off the ONS from chantons. And we add in the they, which would be elles. Let's go for a group of girls singing, elles. And then we add on the ending for that, which would go all the way down. AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIENT. So that would be the ending. Elles chantaient. They used to sing. Number 7, she used to eat. So again, if we think about how do we say we eat, first of all, which is mangeons. And this is why, one of the reasons why we don't just knock the ER off the end, because it wouldn't work in this instance, it'd be wrong. So we have to find out how do we say we eat. And the way we say we eat is we say mangeons. And the verb to eat is a bit of a slightly irregular here because they leave the E in after the G. Otherwise it would be mangon, and we don't want to say mangon, we want to say mangeons. Nice and soft, sounds nice. So mangeons is how we say we eat. We knock off the ONS and we're left with this stem, mange, and then we want to make it into the imperfect tense. So first of all we put L at the beginning, and the ending for L, we go down it, AIS, AIS, AIT, AIT for she as well. So it would be that, elle mangeait. She used to eat. Elle mangeait. She used to eat. Number 9, they used to go out. So again, the first thing we need to do is we need to find how do we say we go out. That's the first thing we need to do. And the way we say that is we say sortons. Nous sortons. That's the present tense. And then don't forget, we're using the present tense to start and find our stem. Which is a little bit confusing because we're mixing a couple of tenses up here. Like I've said already, it is quite confusing. You need to have a good, proper think about this. But we use the present tense we form, sortons, to get to our stem. So we knock off the ONS, we're left with sort, and then we add on the different parts. So we add in il, which is the word for they, and then the ending for this, again we go all the way down, AIS, AIS, AIT, IONS, IEZ, AIENT. So the ending is AIENT. Il sortait would be they used to go out. And finally, number 10 is I was. And this one, if you remember, we said was is the only verb that's an exception to that rule. So we don't this time. We don't need to find the we form, because the we form actually would be some. Nous sommes is how we say the we form of that verb, the verb to be. But then it doesn't work. It's all over the place. Don't forget it's irregular. And actually, the stem is actually ET, because this is one of the only exceptions in the imperfect tense. Just have to remember. So the stem is actually ET. So we add in the je at the beginning and we add in the AIS at the end, and we've got j'étais. So like I said, this is a complex verb, complex tense. The imperfect tense is quite complex. We have to think about it very carefully. And the way we do it is first of all, we find the we form in the present tense, which has got ONS on the end, and we take off the ONS and then we're left with a stem. Sometimes the stem is pretty normal, but as in the case of number 6, for example, the word to drink, it's irregular in that instance, so we have to think about it carefully. This is why in order to be able to do the imperfect tense, you need to know your present tense really well. This is why I said right at the beginning that we need to learn the tense as we go along. So if you're finding this quite difficult, you need to go back and have a look at the present tense first and make sure you've got that sorted out before we move on to the imperfect tense. So we find the we form, we knock off the ONS, and then we add on the different endings. AIS for I, AIS for you, AIT for he, IONS for we, IEZ for you, vous, and then AIENT for they. And then you're left with what you used to do. Like I said, this is quite an advanced tense. It takes a lot of understanding. If you need some more help with it, you can go to Languages Online, and there's imperfect tense section where you can have a go at trying to work out different things. But you're probably going to need a verb table to help you, and you're going to need to make sure you know your present tense. Okay, merci, à bientôt.